All right, folks, it is Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. And of course, a lot of things are still continuing to happen in the world and all along those lines. And of course, we've got a special guest that'll be joining us talking about intuition and other things in that space. And definitely, even sometimes, why people are wondering why good things happen and bad things happen in the world, even as we go on in all that is taking place. But right now, let's just get to a couple of things that are taking place in the world and see what's happening. The Israel's war cabinet is locked between the notion of restraint and revenge. So, Israel's military chief says that Israel will respond to Iran's weekend missile attack. So, definitely that is something that's going on. And some folks are saying that Israel is facing a dilemma as it is trying to figure out how it will deal with a response to the Iran attack. And in Australia, there are folks that are saying that the bishop and priest church stabbing was a terrorist incident. So several people were stabbed inside a church in Sydney, Australia. And definitely it looks like Mari Emanuel, the prominent bishop, was stabbed in that part of the world. So definitely people are mourning the victims of the mass stabbing attack at the Sydney Mall. And definitely the Australian killer's father is revealing why his son targeted women during a deadly stabbing at the Sydney Mall. So it definitely looks like a lot of things that have been happening there in Australia as well. So they are saying that the Sydney Mall attacker may have targeted women, police say, as more details emerge of his six victims as well. And Mike Johnson apparently is taking a risk on separating Israel and Ukraine aid. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news. And the historic Copenhagen Stock Exchange in Denmark has gone up in flames. So that's something else that folks will be talking about, particularly there in Europe, as definitely there are some folks that are saying that Copenhagen's Dragon Tail Tower can rise again with Nova Nordisk help and everything. So definitely it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and even how it plays out in the stock market, since that is one of the stock exchanges that is globally out there. Definitely looks like Ukraine is seeing hypocrisy after Western allies helped intercept Iran's attack on Israel, and U.S. defense of Israel skies spark Ukrainians' envy and ire, is what some people are saying. Says the Ukraine's foreign minister says Israel response to an Iranian aerial attack shows what Kyiv needs. So they're definitely saying that they need some similar kind of support as well. So that's something else that is going on in that part of the world. And Iran's own interests compelled it to put aside its private war with Israel and ease regional tensions. At least that's what one of the articles is saying. And definitely there are some people that are worrying about a powder keg there in the Middle East and all along those lines. And it looks like the UK lawmakers will be voting on a landmark bill to gradually phase out smoking. So if you're a smoker, that might be something that they might be phasing out in the not too distant future. So definitely looks like with that smoking ban, Penny Mordaunt is among the ministers wavering over support. So the UK is to vote on the world's only generational smoking ban. So this looks like the MPs will be voting on a smoking ban for those born after 2009. So I guess those folks will be getting ready to be around 14 or 15, if I'm remembering my math, and all along those lines. But that is something that they are going to do there in the UK area. And, you know, we talk about chaos here in this part of the world, but apparently in Georgia, and you know, that's all part of the Russian government. A Georgian politician punched his opponent in the face in a brawl over the foreign agent law. So the Georgia parliament descends into chaos as lawmakers threw punches over a Putin-style kind of thing that was going on in that space. So it looks like a Putin style foreign agent bill, and they got into fisticuffs in that part of the world. And I'm sure that folks will have some thoughts around that also. And definitely, let me see what's going on in the U.S. Then I'll bring in my special guest because I got one question to ask that I'm sure she gets asked all the time because of the last name. And then we'll get into some of her conversation in the book that she has written as well. And then we'll get to some of the other things that are going on in the world. By the way, Trump's New York hush money trial continues after a sleepy start to jury selection. So definitely jury selection to resume after possible jurors excused for saying that they cannot be impartial. And of course, there are some folks that were saying that Mr. Trump might have even been a little bit dozing off, because it says that a weary Trump appears to doze off in the courtroom ahead of that criminal trial. And the Supreme Court is weighing charges in January 6 case. So the January 6 rioters want the Supreme Court to let them off the hook from obstruction charges. So definitely we'll be hearing whether that takes place or it doesn't take place, and how that goes on in that space. And in sadder news from Baltimore, the fourth body was found weeks after that Baltimore bridge collapse. So it looks like on a more positive note, a construction worker was able to survive that Baltimore Key Bridge collapse, and he said that he fought for his life. And definitely that is something that is good news when you hear about people that are survivors in that sense. And powerful storms could be brewing up, tornadoes and hail in parts of the Midwest. And I know that I think we were expecting some rain yesterday. I don't think that it came here in Durham, North Carolina. And who knows what the weather will be like, because it was definitely a little bit on the warm side yesterday. I think we were in the high 80s, and I think we might be heading to the low 80s today. But it's April, and we're already having like almost some summer like July like weather, even though it's not quite in the hundreds, even though it might be feeling like it could be heading that way. And it looks like there will be pro-Palestinian demonstrators shutting down airport highways and bridges in major cities. So protests in Chicago are expected today. And 54 were arrested after protesters blocked the I-190 near the O'Hare Airport Terminal 1. And Loop March stops the traffic. And as I said before, I did hear that there were efforts to do similar kind of protests here in Durham and other parts of the world as well. So definitely there are a number of things that are going on in the world, and I'm sure we'll get to some other items as well. By the way, the USC has canceled a pro-Palestinian valedictorian speech over security concerns. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. And Biden is pushing his economic populism in battleground Pennsylvania, as Trump is stuck there in that New York case. So Biden is hoping to make Trump's tax plans into a political liability. Well, like I said, I'm going to bring in my guest and see what she's got to say, because she's wrote a book that's got a interesting title and all along those lines. So we're going to bring her in. So how are you doing, Ms. Kraft? Well, like I said, I know a lot of people, when they think of Kraft, they think of Kraft Foods and Kraft all in that space. So that's what I was going to ask you. I wonder if she's related to the Kraft family, because I do know a lot of times when people think of Kraft, they think of Kraft Foods and all in that space.
No, I'm not related to the food people. But
Well,
yeah, I do get that question a lot.
so you get that question a lot. I'm sure you get that quite a bit and everything. I know that you're called the soul navigator, and a lot of times people are concerned about the notion of the soul, and they heard a lot of the news, and a lot of times people are wondering about all the negative news that they get in the world on a regular basis and all along those lines. So I just wondered if you could share a little bit about the soul navigator, and I did love the title of your book, so you could share a little bit about that as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for asking. So, so I do focus on soul navigating, as opposed to navigating one's life. I just kind of make a distinction. So some people in my field work on a person's life purpose.
Mhm.
I work on a soul purpose. And I make the distinction as most people, generally up to the age of about 40, around that time, they're focusing on really mastering how to navigate this world on a material level. And they have reached a certain level of success. And once they reach that level, there's this sense of like, there's something missing. And when a person reaches a stage where they feel like, this isn't working for me anymore, there has to be a better way, they start shifting into focusing on what their soul is asking them to step into. And so in my book, I talk about we have 3 stages of spiritual awakening. And so I walk people through each stage, because we all have common experiences in the different stages. Now, most people that are going to read my book are in stage 2. People in stage 1, the book's not going to even appeal to them because in stage 1, individuals are still feeling very burdened by trying to just live. And they believe that this world, this physical world, is real. And what I am suggesting for people to entertain the idea that this physical world is not real. For those of people who have studied the Course in Miracles, you're going to know what I'm talking about. So basically, what I'm saying is that there's more to us than our physicality. We are spiritual beings that are having a human experience right now. And our task is to listen to our intuition. And the reason I say that is because intuition is the voice of your soul. And the voice of your soul is connected to spirit. And this is how we receive guidance. And the guidance we receive is always taking us one step at a time into our soul path and our purpose for being here.
And speaking of purpose and all along those lines, I know that you actually said something in some of your books that I found quite interesting because I know a lot of times people are always thinking that there are multiple choices, meaning that there are three choices into a lot of issues. That is something that I've heard throughout my life and everything. And then I hear that you said that a lot of times in decisions, there are only two choices for every decision, even though a number of people will say that there are three, and in some cases, even four choices. And I do know, as a fan of blues music, about the notion of the crossroads and people coming to the crossroads where they got to make one choice or another, and all along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that, because when I heard that in some of your material that you were thinking, and you even emphasized in your book, Get Me Out of Here, What's Beyond This Madness, that there are only two choices for every decision that you make.
Right. So there are only two choices. So any decision we make, we're going to come from one of two positions. We're either going to come from the egoic consciousness, or we're going to come from the soul. Now, the egoic consciousness is all about fear, and its job is to keep you stuck in the past. But the soul is about moving you forward. So another way of thinking about this, when we're making a decision, are we coming from fear or are we coming from love? So when we are making a decision, notice how you feel, and notice what is it that you're thinking. And if you're making this decision from fear, the results you're going to get, it's going to be very different than if you come from a place of love.
Along those same lines and everything, I know that you in the book talked, and I know a lot of times people are oftentimes, and I mentioned it earlier, thinking about intuition, and a lot of times we don't even listen to our own intuition. I know that there have been things even in job markets and in romance that I did not follow my intuition, and you even talked about in your book somebody that didn't listen to their intuition, and the consequences was that they lost a friend. So I guess the question that a lot of people have is intuition. What is intuition, and why don't we listen to intuition? Because a lot of times we will, after the fact, realize that we were already given signals, whether some people want to say that was from heaven, or some people want to say that was from the ancestors, or whatever source you may feel that you're getting these signals from. But so a lot of times we as humans are stubborn, and we don't want to listen to those early morning kind of signals and everything. So I just wanted your take on this and why we don't listen to the intuitions. Because when I heard about that friend that was in the book who didn't listen to his, and there were some very serious consequences.
Yeah, so we tend not to listen to our intuition. And the reason for it is just simply we have developed a pattern, a habit of not listening to it, and instead of listening to our logical mind. And our logical mind comes from, again, the ego consciousness. And the ego, I always remind people, it's just a collection of thoughts that we have that we believe are true, but they're not. And so we bring in from previous lives habit formations, patterns, and our task in this life is to identify these patterns and break them because they keep us stuck, and they keep us stuck in suffering and making decisions that come from the ego and not the intuition. And some people tell me, I don't have intuition. But the reality is, everyone has intuition because it comes from your soul, and we all have a soul.
Yeah. Why do you think that? Well, a couple of things. Why do people have a hard time getting rid of that doubt? I know that even on my other shows, the online dinner party, I oftentimes talk about people and their self-defeating kind of things, that inner critic, and all along those lines. And a lot of times, people have different ways of dealing with that inner critic, and even sometimes those outer critics as well. But as a practitioner in this space, and as I remember correctly, you're over there in Canada. We'll be bringing in another Canadian guest as well, because I saw that you are a member of the International Absent Healing Team through the Inner Quest Foundation there in Canada. But why are people having a hard time, whether it's there in Canada or here, extinguishing these doubts in general?
Okay, so actually I'm in Virginia,
Okay.
but I do work with the Inner Quest Foundation in Canada. But the reason why people have difficulty in listening to their intuition is most people, first of all, they don't know how to. Okay. You are so used to listening to the loudest voice, which is the ego. And so I teach people how you can shift from listening to the ego and shift listening to your soul. And the first thing I tell people to do is, when you're making a decision, first of all, just notice how you feel. And then ask yourself in that moment, okay, what am I thinking? And I'll guarantee you it's a fear thought. So if you can catch yourself in that moment and identify, okay, I'm believing something that's not true, because ego thoughts are not true. They're illusions. If you can just catch yourself with that thought and not argue with it and not fight it, because the ego loves a good fight. And so you just want to identify it, and then you want to shift your attention. You want to create a new thought. You want to create a thought that makes you feel wonderful, that touches the essence of who and what you really are.
What is the most common problems that people come to you for? Because, like I said, I do know that you've got your own healing service, and you're definitely doing another number of things, not just this last book, but you've also written a children's book called Finding Me, and I definitely want to hear more about that as well and everything. But and of course, you've been on the various television specials on healing, mediumship, metaphysics, and even had a course in miracles. So I was just wondering, when folks come to you as the soul navigator, what are the most common problems that people are wanting to hear from you?
Okay, so when people come to me as a soul navigator, what they're concerned with, people have this real fear that they don't have enough time. They don't have enough time to master what their soul purpose is. And they have this fear, am I going to have to reincarnate and come back into this life again and have all these struggles? And they have this fear of trying to master their doubt. And when I ask people, what's your biggest problem? They'll say, it's myself. They recognize that they have old thought patterns that are keeping them stuck, and they have a lot of trouble in breaking that habit. And so we're really just talking about how to extinguish old thought patterns and introduce new ones that are real and that are authentic to who and what you really are.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. Before we get ready to bring in some of the other regular panelists, and all along those lines, if you can tell me a little bit about the children's book and about the current book, and then there is a question I'm going to ask about the conflicts on the earth, but I definitely, and then we'll bring in the other folks, and they may have some thoughts and questions as well, including one of the founders of the network. But definitely, I just wondered your take on the children's book, and if you can share a little bit about that as well, and this latest book that apparently won the 2023 New York City Big Book Award as a distinguished favorite in the category of spirituality.
Yes, that was quite exciting. I was very happy about that. So the children's book, I did that, I guess, maybe about 12 years ago. And being an artist, I wanted to illustrate the book. And I wanted a kind of an introduction for people to think about when they're just reaching that stage of remembering who and what they really are. So it's the journey of walking away from the tribe when the tribe no longer serves your soul purpose, and feeling isolated at times, because that's part of the journey also. And then the part where you start hearing that intuition, that soul guidance. And that's a very exciting point in everyone's life, because now your life is going to start shifting. And so I wrote this for children, but I discovered after it was published that it was adults got more excited about it than the children. So there you go.
And a lot of times the adults will get more excited about a children's book than the children. I remember when I was a much younger in terms of my adult years. I think I might have been in my 30s or 40s. My dad actually brought me by to watch with him and my younger brother the movie Shrek. And we were both adults, me and my brother at that time. I think I might have been in my 30s or even 40s. But part of what he was showing us was the notion that a lot of these children's books and even children's movies have adult themes, and that there is a lot of and you heard me say that I'm a fan of blues, and blues is full of double entendres, and even some of these movies have double entendres and double meanings and secret meanings that are intentionally placed there so that the adults can enjoy it while they are taking their kids out to enjoy themselves. So I do remember he showed me that with I think it was the first Shrek, and all in that space. But just out of curiosity, I was just wondering, because like I said, I'm going to bring in some of my other folks, including Rick Rosner, who used to be on the Jimmy Kimmel Show and all along those lines. But as you heard me say earlier, there are a number of things that are going on in the world and a lot of conflicts in the world and everything. So why do you think we are witnessing all of these conflicts in the world, and what can we do with these conflicts in the world? Because that is something that I know a lot of people are wondering about. We got this planet Earth that we're in, and every time we turn around, there is another conflict. You heard me mention Ukraine and Russia, and definitely Israel and Hamas. But I mean, you can go on any part of the world, and you can see parts of the globe. I think that my my founder of this network, or one of the two founders, is talking about running away to Spain because of the fact that he's ready for this place to kind of go into explosion and all along those lines. So he's ready to escape. So I just wanted your take as to why we have these conflicts and everything.
Okay, so this is really there's a simple answer to this, because society and countries is an extension of the individual. So if we have a lot of individuals who are believing in the ego or believing in fear, they're believing in separation. And that means they're always being defensive, and they have to save themselves in some way. They feel like they're being attacked. So if you have a group of people that are feeling that way, it's going to manifest on a societal level. It's really that simple. So our journey is really one individual at a time, recognizing the essence of what we are, which is love and not fear. And as more people do that, we'll see a shift in society on how we view what needs to be done. And it's going to come from a more compassionate place and not from fear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I'm going to bring in Rick and also bring in one of the founders of the network, that being Nick Palveda.
I'm not running away to Spain. I'm just getting a place in Spain. And the reason why, Mark, is that I've been going to Europe for a month every year for the last 4 years and spending a month tootling around Europe. And then I want to spend more time there. So I need a place there. So I don't have to fly back and forth, So I'm coming back in October. Then I'll go back and, hang out in Spain. I got my application for a long-term visa so I can go back and forth. Otherwise, I'm limited to 90 days, And it's because of what Melody just said. The cosmic order of the universe is telling me to go to Spain. So I listen to the cosmic order of the universe. It says, you need to go to Spain. Why? I have no clue. So I defer to my more intelligent partner, Mr. Rick Rosner, who's a Mega Society member, and he can tell us more about the metaphysical.
So Melody, how do your principles fit into a world in which science increasingly explains the world?
Well, science, again, we do need some level of logic in this world. After all, we need engineers to build safe bridges. Okay, but I think when we just simply focus on science without listening to our intuition, we're going to have a lopsided view of what's real. So we always want to distinguish the difference between illusion and reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's the cosmic order of the universe. I mean, just get real. Okay,
But
there's
speaking
a
of the
cosmic
cosmic
order in this crazy universe. You got to listen to the cosmic order of the universe. It will tell you what to do.
But speaking of
That's
that
why I'm
cosmic order
otherwise
and
doing
everything, I did have a question for Melody, kind of based on our other conversations in this show and everything. We've got a lot of people that are concerned about the fact, at least here in the United States, that we've got older folks that are running for office. We don't have anybody like Isaiah, who's only not even hit 30 yet. And we've got Brandon, who sometimes comes on the show, who just hit 30 on yesterday and everything. And maybe we need to be listening more to
And Isaiah, you're being backlit. Isaiah, you don't know this, but you are being backlit, which in English means you have light behind you, okay? And so it makes you look dark. You have to have the light in front of you and dark behind you. Otherwise, you're backlit. But go on.
But really quickly, a lot of times we don't have enough of this leadership from our younger people, and a lot of times we depend on the older folks. And some of these older folks, I think, have a masterful amount of ego, because there is no doubt that Donald Trump has a lot of ego. Some people might say that Biden has a lot of ego as well, maybe a little bit too much ego. And one of the things that folks know that are part of this network is I work at a cultural arts center in Durham, and the gentleman that was affiliated with Duke had a lot of ego, because he actually put a very big stained glass window up at the top of what was a church at the time and is now a converted cultural arts center. And it is even more prominent than that of Jesus Christ himself and everything. So Mr. Duke said, yes, I'll give you some money, but if I give you the money, you've got to put me up in a more prominent display. And to me, that is an exercise in vanity, if ever there was one. And all along those lines.
Oh!
Your take on
who is this man
over ego?
Whose ego is greater than Donald Trump? I didn't think that existed. You know, when he makes a donation, his ego to the Harvard Medical School, when he dies, it'll be the greatest donation ever made to Harvard. Ask him. It'll be the greatest donation ever made to Harvard when I grant my ego. You know, the guy is completely out of control. But we should get back to Melody and her soul navigator, because my navigation unit went out of control years ago. So maybe you can help put us.
So Melody, what is your thoughts on this? There's a lot of people that are running overly ego. And like I said, I mentioned one, but there are others. There are some that are here in North Carolina. We've got some interesting candidates.
Wait. Rick has a question. His question is, does Donald Trump have a soul? Which is a good question, because he may not be able to navigate his soul because he doesn't have one. But go on, Melody.
I defer to Melody.
Well, he does have a soul, but it's so buried he doesn't have a clue that he has it.
Oh!
So I have we have a couple dogs, and they're idiots, but they obviously experience the world as conscious beings. Part two is, we've been arguing and talking about, 20 years from now, we might have AIs and robots and that have the ability to think that is so developed that A, do animals have souls? B, will it be possible to make artificial beings who have souls?
Well, that's interesting. So the question I would think is, what soul would want to incarnate into a mechanical object?
Well, somebody who wants to, like, say a billionaire who wants to keep living when they get to 110 and they get their brain moved into some mechanical replacement for themselves. Of course, that's ego if you're 110 and you want to keep going. I think of Rupert Murdoch, who's 93 and is still, hooking up with younger ladies.
Yeah, so actually, I'm not too sure how to answer that. I just can't imagine any soul that would choose that.
What about the second part of the question that Rick asked? Because a lot of times people do wonder that, because like I said, I don't have any currently, but I have had pets in the past, and actually I had a delivery mistakenly sent to my old apartment, and I went and met the young lady that's over there, and she had Pickles, which is her cat, and everything, and the cat looked like it was having fun and was enjoying the young lady's company. So I'm thinking that Pickles maybe has a soul, and I'm thinking that definitely Nick has a dog named Tilly, and I'm thinking Tilly might have a soul as well. So do animals have souls? Even though I don't currently have any pets, but I do sometimes wonder that if they have a soul, even some of the animals that we don't like the critters that are vermin that are in our society. And even I've heard people talk about in some native cultures, the notion that even trees may have souls as well. But what is your take on that?
Well, anything that takes a physical form has a soul. How else could it be here? It includes trees, plants, everything.
What about
They
rocks?
have different level, even rocks. They have different levels of consciousness.
Really? Wow, I didn't know that. You know, but there's a lot I don't know about. So
Yeah.
you can just
And
have
just
that.
out of curiosity, Ms. Craft and everything, what is the reason for the title of your book? Because like I said, I love the title of the book because a lot of people have that notion, and they have that notion regularly with all that's going on in the world. Because when the book is titled "Get Me Out of Here, What's Beyond This Madness," I'm sure that a lot of people, and we'll be adding it to our bookstore and everything, are wondering, yeah, how can I get out of here? Because like you heard me mention some of the things going on in the world, and a lot of people are going like, hey, this is a madhouse, and they want to leave the madhouse. I've even had some friends that claimed that they were already from other parts of the madhouse, because I've even had some folks that claim, whether you believe it or not, that they are of alien descent. I'll just think of that because there are some people that are serious.
Yeah. Well, ever since I was a child, I just thought this world was quite mad. It never made any sense to me. And I thought, I got to get out of here. As a child, I thought there's been a serious mistake. I shouldn't be here. This place doesn't make any sense. And so that's kind of always been with me. And I've always saw a lot of people that were quite unhappy, and unhappy people can really do destructive things. And so my whole life I've been concerned about, how can you shift from this madness into a reality that's loving?
Yeah, but there's a lot of happiness stuff, of course. But see, I believe in being happy, Melody.
Yes,
I believe.
I agree.
Somebody always asks me, "How's your day going?" That's like, I'm having a great day. Why? Because I always have a great day. Why would I want to have a bad day? So I live on a beautiful golf course. I can look at the greens. And then when I go to Spain, Mark, I'm not going to live in some shack. I'm going to live in a beautiful villa overlooking the sea. I'm going to have a great time. While I'm here, I'm going to have a bloody great time. People don't like it. Too bad. So the thing is, my goal in life is to make sure I have a great time. It's real simple. Now, the rest of the people, if you want to be miserable, you want to go fight some bloody war in Ukraine, that's your job, but not my job. No, not going to do it. And if I don't want to listen to garbage like this election, I'll go over to Spain. I'll listen to Spanish, and they'll describe the election, but I won't understand what they're saying. So I'll have a good time over there too. So what is wrong with your cosmic order of the universe, your path?
Well, I like
of lightness and happiness rather than the abject misery that exists in this planet, a young lady.
Neil,
wait, Sasha has an answer. Sasha
I think
really
you
good
hit
guru
it
of
right.
Canada.
You hit it right. By not understanding what other people are saying, this is the key to happiness. Because if you don't understand, and then they're mom and you don't care what they're saying and why they're saying and whatever they're saying, you just don't care because you don't understand. So when you understand, that's a problem because you have to agree or disagree, or you have to discuss it and so on. But the best way is, like in Italy, people who don't understand Italian, they say no capisce. Okay?
No capisce.
No capisce, but hey, Melody.
That's what I got. Now I have a question to Melody. Is something you mentioned earlier a few times about intuition. I'm familiar with intuition coming from my experience as a chess player. Intuition is a very big thing in chess. However, intuition in chess is based on your overall experience in strategy, in tactics, in different positions, against different opponents, or so on. And eventually, you have formulating a certain unconscious method of finding most likely the best possible move by not calculating, okay, this move is good, but not as good. This one is a little bit better. Maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll try that. No, it's coming from your overall experience subconsciously, and you come up with in most cases, the best and most efficient move. I don't know how it's applied to what you are talking about, the soul and so on, but I understand that at least in chess, it's applicable in music. In music, a lot of intuition too, because let's see, if you play, let's see, a certain tune and improvisation in a certain key, And you play it over and over, week after month after years, and you already develop certain pattern how you do it. All of a sudden, if you do the same thing in different key, now your patterns and your fingering and everything is thrown away, and you have to figure out a new way of playing it, because the old way doesn't work anymore because you're in the new key. So you have to mostly by intuition find a certain new patterns that you never had to deal before, and hopefully it will guide you in the best possible. And sometimes what's interesting is that your new key provides you with the better interpretations that whatever you play for years in the old key. And the reason is because you started to use your intuition instead of going over and over and over established pattern. But I don't know if I'm very clear myself, because I think people who are in chess or in music or both, maybe they will appreciate what I said.
Yeah, they definitely would appreciate that and everything. Just really quickly, Melody and everything. One of the questions I was going to ask you and everything is, I know a lot of times, and particularly even sometimes it's more prominent with young people that they sometimes block, and but even folks that are like my age, 60s, but I'm thinking to Isaiah, who's, like I said, under 30, may sometimes block his intuition. So how can people get rid of those intuition blockers? And do you find that this is an issue that is not as much of a concern to those that are in that millennium age range, because they are just getting started in their life, and maybe they're not thinking about the notion of the world being a madhouse the way that you were when you were a youngster and everything? But I just wanted your take on the use and whether they are paying attention to this, and also the notion of intuition blockers.
I don't get very many young people coming to me for that issue, but I do think that on some level, they are aware that they have intuition. And that causes the conflict within them, because they find themselves bouncing back and forth from, okay, what's the rest of the world doing? And yet I'm feeling I should do something else. And so, it's about, at one point, just making a decision. I'm just going to listen to that quiet inner voice, because when I do, things work. When I don't, they don't work.
Well, one of the things I've heard, and I think Isaiah may have some questions for you as well, but one of the things I've heard both young people and old people talk about is this notion of being drained. And sometimes they are feeling overly drained, and they're sometimes even feeling that family members and others are almost sucking their lifeblood from them. Some people might even call those folks energy vampires, and all in that space. But are there such folks, and how do you deal with those? And because sometimes they're at your work environment, and you can't always, they say you can choose your family, but you can't always choose your workmates if you are stuck in certain jobs and everything. So how do you deal with those folks if they are in a situation that you may not be able to get out of? And sometimes you can definitely not choose your family members that may be the ones sucking that lifeblood out of you and everything. So what is your take on how to deal with those folks that may be draining you in that way?
Okay, you said a couple really interesting things in there. I'm not too sure where to begin. So I'm going to start with, especially if you're very sensitive to energy. A lot of people have a large extended energy field. So they become emotional sponges. They pick up what other people are feeling. These people often like to be of service. They like to help people. Okay, an energy vampire is going to be immediately attracted to people who like to be of service, because they want to be carried. They don't want to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. And so I always suggest to people who have this archetype of a rescuer, rather than, when you see someone who needs help, rather than immediately jumping in, because that's your default position, to just literally take one physical step backwards and breathe, and ask yourself the question, if I step in and help this person at this time, will I be empowering them, or will I be disempowering them? So they will not be able to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. And whatever your answer is, that determines whether you step in and help or you stand back.
Yeah.
Rick had a question.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a show called What We Do in the Shadows, which has regular vampires, and it has an energy vampire who's a pretty funny character. He sucks out all your emotional energy in various ways.
That was my homeowners association board of directors. That's what they were doing. They were
We
sucking
just
out all the energy.
LA Times just had like a 3-page article on a HOA that defrauded over 20 years the people in their apartments for $6 million.
Well,
Oh, well, they didn't suck the money out. They're actually pretty good on that, Rick. But the thing is, so when I moved to this series of townhouses, I was greeted by a violation. In other words, this big roller sticker violation. I said, "What's this for?" Oh, you had your address on top of your townhouse. I said, "But wait a minute, everybody has it on there." Yeah, but the thing is, it has to be down below, not above. But I bought it; it was like that. So I argued with them for a year, and they finally took it off. Then I got on the board because I wanted to get to know these people a little bit better. And I said, you guys, I didn't want to tell them, I don't know how to say in English, but you really suck. You guys are sending 75 violations a month to everybody here. And like you're treating them like kids on stupid things. And even I got a violation for this, and I finally got removed. And you know what they did? They sent me another violation notice. I was going, it was a 3-year dogfight, and it was called Briar Creek Townhouse Association. We're in the Briar Creek Country Club. We're exclusive. You're baloney, So after I was on the board for a couple of years, then finally I was on a trip to San Francisco, and I was doing some speeches in San Francisco and Utah, and they were holding the elections. And these people, because they had got rid of these horrible board members, the horrible board members ran around the community grabbing proxy votes. They got back on. And I'm sitting there, and I got off. Basically, I got off now. I said, look, guys, here's one thing I can do. And this is what everybody needs to know. You don't have to stay in your situation. Make sure you have enough economic power that you can move. And I said, I don't have to listen to you guys. I can live anywhere in the world, like no kidding. And I don't have to listen to you. And I'm not going to. So I've listed my thing for sale, got a great price, and I'm out of there. Okay, what does it mean? Some of these hoods that you look at, they're like, oh, they look so wonderful. Let's move in there. It can be run by a bunch of, demons or vampires, emotionally suck your blood daily, townhouse association. I am so happy because, I believe in being happy. I'm so happy I'm bloody out of there. I don't have to listen to these people. Now we have another thing. Here in the United States, you got Trump and Biden. This thing's going to go on for months. It's going to be horrible. Look, I'm going to be listening to Spanish and European radio, and you guys can, I'll listen to you when I want to. But and if Trump gets in, I got 4 years. I'll be hanging out in Europe, going to Vienna, Venice, all the places I like, Rome, Italy. And every now and then I'll pick up a newspaper, and I know Trump will have been doing something incredibly crazy. And all the Americans are going to be emotionally crippled in 4 years. Then he'll be gone because he can't run again. They'll come back. So I think that, to me, Melody is a great plan. That is my soul navigator, baby. And here's my visa, baby.
Sounds like a great plan. Hey, Melody, Melody, along those same lines and everything.
Sasha's already out of Canada, and Isaiah goes to Colombia, and our other producers over in Bali. So you don't have to put up with the trash you think you have to put up with. You change your bloody environment, but we're not trained to do that in school. We're trained to sit there and listen and take it, and sit there and listen and take it. Anyway, that's my opinion.
No, but along those same lines, Melody, one of the things I was going to ask you is, it's a question that a lot of people ask in the religious standpoints, and I consider myself more spiritual than religious, but a lot of times you will have people that are asking their ministers, asking their imams, asking whoever they may be, their spiritual leader, as to why do people suffer and how we can transfer that suffering, which apparently what Nick's going to do is get out of town and everything to peace and joy. But that is a common question.
I'll be on the beach, baby.
They ask quite often of people in general, because I have some friends that are ministers and I have friends that are leaders of other religious groups as well. So what is your answer to that, as one that has written this book and is into the metaphysical and everything? Because that is a common question that everybody wants to know. If I've got a friend that is getting ready to fight a battle with cancer, and I'm sure he's probably wondering why he had to have this particular diagnosis at this particular time in his life. And I've had other friends that have suffered things in their life as well. So I guess the question is, if God is almighty, why is he allowing people to suffer and all in that space? So your answer to those folks that might be answering that question.
Okay, so I would say God has nothing to do with suffering. Nothing. God is love and only knows love. Anything outside of that is an illusion. So why people suffer? And again, it goes back to believing into the consciousness of the ego. It's really that simple. Life
Yeah,
is simple.
absolutely.
I'm not saying it's easy. The journey of the soul is the hardest thing we'll ever have to do. But it's simple if we're willing to examine our thoughts and shift the way we're thinking.
So in the 20th century, a lot of countries turned dark. Italy, Germany, Japan. You could say that the U.S. is going through a dark period. Do countries or other collections of people have collective souls?
I'm not sure what you mean by collective.
Well, Germany is the most famous country that went from being a sophisticated, advanced artistic country, and then in the 30s, they turned to fascism and slaughtered, murdered 11 million people.
I guess what he's asking, if I can put it in a different standpoint and everything, is a lot of times people are worried about groupthink. And that's part of what people thought was going on in Germany. And some people think it's happening in other parts of the world. There are even some people that could argue that that's part of what's going on with folks on both the far left and the far right in our own politics. So I guess what the kind of question he's asking is, in the soul journey, is there the fear of groupthink?
Well, we do have a collective consciousness. So we can access any thought that has ever existed. But when people when they're not feeling good about themselves, when they're feeling like they've been victimized, in Germany in the 30s, the individuals were feeling that way. So it became a collective thought process. And so it was ripe for someone to come through and tell them, yes, you're victims, and it's because of this other group that's causing it. And then that's the things that happened in Germany at that time are the same things that are happening in the United States today. And
yeah, exactly. If I can go off of Melody's saying, I've actually studied the subject a lot about different consciousness. There's actually a science to it. It's called integral theory, and it's basically there's different stages of your consciousness based off when you're a baby, and then you can keep going up. And then some people get stuck in certain types of consciousness, like us versus them, or there's one that's like the green movement, where people just all they want to do is green stuff, but they don't integrate all the consciousness together and whatnot. But anyways, what Rick is saying, the collective consciousness is really about an individual revolution. It's how we're going to change this world, and how we're not going to have all these conflicts anymore, is if we don't have those conflicts within ourselves anymore. And the only way to do that is how Melody's saying, is through love. So what does that mean? Is that you have to change your mindset, that you accept and you're able to embrace everything that happens, the good and the bad, where everything is united, and that way you don't have any more conflicts. And what does that mean? Is letting go of your fears, because your fears is what creates those conflicts. So and the authority, you seek authority because you have fear that you're not an authority figure yourself. And so everything that Melody is saying is about losing your fears, is how we can actually change this world and become empowered. But it's really an individual process.
Hey,
well, can you really change the world? Isn't it better, Isaiah, to change your world as opposed to the world? So exactly. It's much easier to change your world. A lot of people go, I'm going to go change the world. No. You can change your world, but not the world. And people
Nick, along those same lines, and there's a guest that usually comes in, and he's not here today. He might have had a game yesterday and everything. But one of the things Melody that Jatovi, who is a regular on the show, talks about is this notion of otherism, and how we sometimes will paint people into a corner because they are the perceived enemy, because they are not like us, whatever us is and everything. So I just wondering your take on that, because that is something that I know has been brought up on this show several times, because a lot of times we want to pick on people because we may not understand them, whether that's the migrants, whether that's the trans, whether that's a number of other folks as well. But I just wanted your take on that and how that plays into the soul journey as well.
Okay, so that means that people are feeling separate. So when we don't recognize who and what we really are, Okay, so now we're in a state of the ego again, which is about separation. You're different from me. I'm different from all of you. That's separation. And what that means is, because when you don't know what your true identity is, then you're feeling defensive in protecting this false identity. And so it's going to be easy then to attack others that you perceive that are different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see that and everything. I think Isaiah is coming back on and everything he bounced off and all along those lines. Go ahead, Rick.
So I don't believe in free will. I think it's more important to have informed will, to understand why you make the decisions that you're making. Can you talk about free will's and other will's role in following your soul journey?
Okay, so like the Gita talks about, our life is planned. Okay, and then the Course in Miracles talks about our life is planned. And that basically what we're doing right now is reviewing the script that's already been written. So within that script, there are experiences that we want to have because it gives us opportunities to learn about ourselves. It also means, I'm just trying to think where I was going with something.
Are you quoting the Gita, like the Bhagavad Gita? Is that
The Gita talks about this, but the Course
Okay.
in Miracles talks about the script. They talk about it, the same thing, but in a different language. What was the question again? So I kind of forgot what the question was.
So I think free will doesn't make
Free
sense
will.
to me.
Okay.
What free of what? You're always making decisions based on information, and it's more important to understand, why you're making your decisions rather than whether those decisions are somehow free.
Okay, so that's perfect what you said. The why is always important. And so what the freedom that we do have is we get to choose. Where am I coming from? Again, am I coming from fear, or am I coming from a place of love? So mostly in this life, it's good to become the observer of what's going on and not allow ourselves to get caught up in the madness.
Hey,
So we can
Melody, you
stand back
said something. Melody, you said something along the same lines I found interesting. I've heard that before as well, which is this notion that our destiny, our life has already been predetermined, and a lot of times people want to change whatever that predetermination is and everything. So I just wondered, are you saying that our life plan, our life journey has already been written from beginning to end, or is there kind of coming back to what Rick was saying, a free will, and that you can change the course of your destiny?
I think you can change the course of your destiny, and you change the course of your destiny and step out of fate when you're no longer listening to the egoic consciousness.
And did you quote script and counter script from I'm Okay, You're Okay? Was that the book that you read?
I haven't read that book.
We haven't read that book. Okay. All right.
You
Go on,
see
Rick.
people making bad decisions around sex all the time. And I think informed will is looking at your thoughts and mostly, my brain is giving me the best picture of the world possible, except not with regard to sex, because, after billions of years of evolution and, that my brain has evolved to want me to reproduce. So it's going to trick me with regard to sex and make me act against my best interests and the interests of the people around me if I'm not aware that my brain might trick me this way.
Okay.
Is that a statement or a question, Counselor?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's a statement. Sorry, I hate when people are supposed to be asking questions, they make statements. But it leads to, what do you think about your brain sabotaging you?
Oh, again, it's going back to old thought patterns. You can continue old thought patterns, or are you ready to, let's change it because this is not working for me?
Yeah, exactly. And it's about deconditioning your mind, because throughout life you've just been conditioned by what society says, by what your parents say, by what everything, and what you've had is you hardwire your brain to think in certain ways, to have certain fears, and the whole point is to let go of those fears, to just like just be in nature, because that's what you are, and you're not perfect. You're just like any other animal basically, and it's just like you have to accept that, because just like you said, Rick, like you're limited in sex, or you're limited in really everything, in every single aspect of our lives. We're so limited that we don't know what we don't know. So there's just so much more out there that you just have to like just not be in fear, and just like keep like following your intuition, or just keep doing what you believe is right in your own, for your own life.
Sasha?
I would like to mention before I leave, because you have a Ukrainian show in 5 minutes. I don't believe in a scripted scenario of your life whatsoever. Absolutely not. And I'll give you my own example. When I was born in then Soviet Union, and I came up with a decision to leave it and move elsewhere, but from Soviet Union, and I did it. Then, while I was one of the top 3 pianists in Toronto area, I've learned about public companies, invested in one, and then started my own public company without ever being student of any university in North America. And in Russia, I graduated from musical institute. And then later on, I started business consulting career. And then I went into investing and chess. And that's all I wanted to do for myself. I made the conscious decisions each time, and I followed my decisions. I don't believe that somebody else scripted that for me, that at a certain time I would move out of Soviet Union, and then I would be a pianist, and then I would do this or that. I just happened not to believe in that. But again, people can believe anything what they want to believe, and if somebody is more comfortable with a scripted scenario, please.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. I'm not suggesting someone else created your script, that we choose our own because there's certain experiences we want to have, to become empowered. And so
yeah, but Sasha's just one weird dude. Let's just get real.
We're all allowed to be ourselves.
Not normal. If he did his normal thing, he'd be living in Odessa, suffering through the rest of his life, can't figure out why he's there, but Sasha's weird, so he left. Anyway, that's my opinion, Sasha.
Hey guys.
I'll see you on the Ukraine show. Just make sure it goes on.
So Isaiah said, you don't know what you don't know. How do you use your principles, Melody, to overcome the limitations of your own brain?
Meditation.
Well, I'm terrible at meditation. I'm highly distractible. So, are there any, you got any tips? Because I can never quiet my brain.
Okay, so just 3 times a day, once in the morning, afternoon, and evening, just be quiet for 3 minutes. Just 3 minutes. You will develop a pattern, and over time, that length will start extending. If it's really difficult, join a group in person that does meditation, one that you feel comfortable with, because the group energy will help you in that space. And maybe you need to be more active. There's walking meditation, active meditation, where you're walking or you're doing something that you really enjoy, especially if it has a repetitive pattern to it. It slows the mind down. So when we slow our breath down to 5 to 7 times per minute, our mind starts getting quieter. So you can just slow your breath down.
Just really quickly, because we're getting ready to wind down the show. Melody, you've been a great guest. If you would just share a little bit about the notion of the ego myth, just really quickly, and also how people can reach you and all along those lines. And we'll have to get you to come back, because it was a great conversation. I think you definitely inspired Isaiah, myself, and others as well. So if you can let folks know how you can be reached if you want to touch base on the ego myth as well.
Okay. Well, they can reach me through my website, which is melodycraft.com. And I'm actually going to have a workshop on intuition blockers coming up in a few weeks. So if anyone contacts me, they're certainly welcome to join. And the ego myth is that it's good to have a big ego. No, it's not.
So I noticed you have 2 F's in your name. So if people go to Melody 1F Craft, they're probably not going to get there.
They may get there.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 F's in the name. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mark. It's good seeing all of you.
No
Talking
problem.
to
It was a
you.
fun conversation. We're going to get on out of here and get ready to do the Ukraine Russia show. But it's been a great conversation. We'll be back with more news on tomorrow. But we'll see you later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.